Deep in the mountainous north of Yemen, the Houthi movement emerged from humble beginnings. Its roots trace back to the 1990s, with the founding of the Believing Youth Group by Hussein Bedreddin al-Houthi. This group, composed primarily of Zaidi Shia Muslims, aimed to revive their branch of Islam. The movement's origins lie in religious revivalism, advocating for Zaidi rights and opposing the Yemeni government's corruption. Hussein al-Houthi became a vocal critic of the Yemeni government. His sermons resonated with many in the impoverished north, who felt marginalized by the central government in Sana'a. The Houthi ideology, while rooted in jihadi revivalism, is a complex mix of religious, political, and social grievances. It draws inspiration from the teachings of Hussein al-Houthi, who espoused a blend of anti-Western sentiment, Yemeni nationalism, and social justice. A central tenet of Houthi ideology is the concept of death to America, death to Israel, curse on the Jews, victory to Islam, a slogan chanted at rallies and displayed on banners. This reflects their strong opposition to U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East, which they view as inherently anti-Muslim and supportive of Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories. The Houthis also advocate for greater autonomy and self-determination for Yemen's northern provinces, historically marginalized and underdeveloped. They accuse the central government of neglecting their region, siphoning off resources, and failing to address the needs of their people. The transformation of the Houthis from a religious group to an armed rebellion was gradual, fueled by escalating tensions with the Yemeni government. In 2004, the Yemeni government, led by President Ali Abdullah Saleh, launched a military offensive against the Houthis in their northern stronghold of Sada. The government accused Hussein al-Houthi of inciting violence, forming an illegal militia, and challenging the state's authority. However, the Houthis viewed the government's offensive as an attack on their community and a suppression of their religious freedoms. This marked the beginning of a series of 6 wars between the Houthis and the Yemeni government. Each war further radicalized the Houthis and strengthened their resolve. They proved to be a resilient fighting force, skilled in guerrilla warfare and exploiting the mountainous terrain of northern Yemen. The wars also deepened their mistrust of the government and fueled their grievances. The Arab Spring, which swept across the Middle East in 2011, had a profound impact on Yemen. The protests that erupted in Sana'a, demanding the ouster of President Saleh, created a power vacuum that the Houthis would skillfully exploit. As the government weakened, the Houthis seized the opportunity to expand their influence beyond their northern strongholds. They forged alliances with other disgruntled groups, including those loyal to former President Ali Abdullah Saleh, who saw the Houthis as a tool to regain power. In 2014, the Houthis, in a swift and stunning offensive, marched into Sana'a, the capital of Yemen, and took control of the government. President Abdrabbuh Mansour Hadi, who had replaced Saleh in a US-backed transition, was forced to flee the country. This marked a turning point in Yemen's conflict, transforming it from an internal power struggle into a regional proxy war. Saudi Arabia enters the fray, a regional conflict ignites. The Houthi takeover of Sana'a sent shockwaves across the region, particularly in Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia. The Saudis, who view the Houthis as an Iranian proxy threatening their southern border, responded decisively by launching a military intervention in Yemen. In March 2015, a Saudi-led coalition, backed by the United States and other Western powers, began airstrikes against Houthi positions in Yemen. The coalition aimed to restore President Hadi to power and roll back Houthi gains, which they perceived as a direct threat to Saudi security and regional stability. The Saudi intervention, however, had the opposite effect, dragging Yemen further into a quagmire of violence and chaos. The conflict quickly escalated into a proxy war, with Saudi Arabia and Iran supporting opposing sides, further fueling sectarian tensions in the region. The Yemeni conflict is not a simple two-sided war. It is a complex and multifaceted conflict, with a multitude of actors vying for power and influence. The country is fractured along regional, tribal, and sectarian lines, making a political solution elusive. The Houthis, while controlling the north, including Sana'a, face resistance from various factions across Yemen. The Southern Transitional Council, backed by the United Arab Emirates, seeks independence for southern Yemen, further complicating the conflict. The internationally recognized government of President Hadi, though weakened and exiled, retains some support, particularly in the south and east. However, it is plagued by internal divisions and struggles to assert its authority. The ongoing conflict in Yemen has triggered one of the world's worst humanitarian crises, pushing the country to the brink of famine and collapse. Years of fighting, airstrikes, and blockades have devastated Yemen's infrastructure, crippled its economy, and left millions facing starvation, disease, and displacement. The United Nations estimates that over 24 million Yemenis, more than two-thirds of the population, are in need of humanitarian assistance. Millions are internally displaced, forced to flee their homes due to violence, insecurity, and lack of basic necessities. The COVID-19 pandemic further exacerbated the crisis, overwhelming Yemen's already fragile healthcare system. The country has reported one of the highest death rates from COVID-19 in the Middle East, highlighting the dire consequences of conflict and collapse. Despite facing a well-equipped and well-funded Saudi-led coalition, the Houthis have demonstrated remarkable military resilience and adaptability. They have successfully defended their northern strongholds, launched audacious cross-border attacks into Saudi Arabia, and inflicted significant casualties on their adversaries. The Houthis' military success can be attributed to several factors. They possess a deep knowledge of the terrain, allowing them to effectively utilize guerrilla tactics and launch surprise attacks. Their fighters are highly motivated, driven by a blend of ideological fervor, local grievances, and a desire to defend their communities. Moreover, the Houthis have developed sophisticated military capabilities, including ballistic missiles, drones, and naval mines. These weapons, though believed to be supplied or technologically assisted by Iran, have allowed them to project power beyond Yemen's borders, threatening Saudi infrastructure and shipping lanes. Iran's alleged support for the Houthis fuels regional tensions and complicates conflict resolution. Evidence suggests varying degrees of Iranian support, from financial aid to training. Saudis view this as an attempt to destabilize the region and threaten their security. These measures have had limited impact and worsened the humanitarian crisis. The future of Yemen hangs in the balance, with no clear end in sight to the years-long conflict. Despite numerous attempts at brokering a peace agreement, a lasting solution remains elusive, hampered by deep mistrust between the warring parties, complex regional dynamics, and the lack of a unified international response. The Houthis, emboldened by their military successes and control over northern Yemen, appear unwilling to compromise on their key demands, which include a withdrawal of foreign forces, a share of power in any future government, and an end to the blockade. The Saudi-led coalition, though facing mounting international pressure to end the war, remains committed to preventing a Houthi victory, which they view as a strategic defeat and a threat to their security. The conflict has come at a high cost for Saudi Arabia, both financially and in terms of its international reputation. The conflict in Yemen has had a devastating impact on the country and its people, leaving behind a legacy of destruction, displacement, and despair. Rebuilding Yemen and healing the wounds of war will be a long and arduous process, requiring a concerted effort from all parties involved. A sustainable peace in Yemen requires addressing the root causes of the conflict, including historical grievances, political exclusion, economic inequality, and the lack of basic services. This necessitates a comprehensive approach that goes beyond a mere ceasefire or power-sharing agreement. The international community has a moral and political imperative to act decisively to end the suffering in Yemen. This includes pressuring all parties to engage in good faith negotiations, ensuring the unimpeded delivery of humanitarian aid, and holding accountable those responsible for war crimes and human rights abuses.